are now into the second panel. And I think no, we do not have a panel or a poll at this point, but on tap, we have Ms. Jennifer Franks from the Government Accountability Office, GAO. We've got Salma Call, Small Business Administration, and we have Daryl Peak from Google. I will allow them, as before, to introduce themselves. So, Ms. Franks, can you introduce yourself?
Absolutely. Hi, my name is Jennifer Franks. I'm an assistant director with the Information Technology and Cybersecurity team within the U.S. Government Accountability Office. I've been with GAO for about 14 and a half years, and my portfolio primarily reviews evaluating government agencies' confidentiality, integrity, and availability of their information systems and the data. At the agency, I also serve as adjunct faculty, and in that role, I teach new hire courses, as well as diversity, equity, and inclusion courses. So I'm happy to be here.
Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for introducing yourself. Salma.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. I am with the SBA. I've actually been here for about a year now as a Fed. Prior to that, most of my career, if not all of it, has been as a consultant on various federal government projects, from Department of Defense to HUD to FEMA and Homeland Security and such. I have had a variety of job roles, starting from help desk to being a programmer, to where I am now for the majority of my career, which is in security. And again, within security, I've done auditing, risk management, and so on and so forth. So I've worn many hats, and I've enjoyed every one of them, and I'm happy to be here and to be part of this panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Salma, for being here. We're looking forward to having you. Daryl. Mr. Peak.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Daryl Peak. I am the head of federal strategic partnerships for Google Public Sector. In that role, I am responsible for working with our federal system integrators to implement the Google platform and associated tools, which include the DoD, federal civilian, the intelligence community, as well as nonprofits. I've been at Google, this is my 5th week actually. So I recently joined Google in this role, but previously I was with Salesforce for 2 years doing strategy and business development, where I was responsible for evangelism, partner engagements, as well as working with our account team. And there I also was part of our employee resource group, which was called Boldforce. And prior to that, I spent 5 years at the Department of Homeland Security, starting my career there in the cybersecurity area, in the continuous diagnostics and mitigation program, and then moving on to the CTO's office and headquarters CIO. So there I was responsible for a number of technology initiatives, technology scouting, as well as shared services across the department, as well as helping to establish the ERG and to ensure employee engagement across the department. So that is something that I'm really passionate about, and I'm excited to talk about the topic today. So I'm looking forward to talking with all of you.
All right, great. And we got a lot of polling questions, right? So we got to make sure folks get their CPEs. Thank you all for introducing yourself. And I want to introduce another polling question for this hour. And we'll queue it up here for the audience. And let me make sure this is the correct one. Okay. All right, there you go. As the question indicates, what are the most important factors when progressing through your career? I like this question in particular because it shows that there are a lot of factors that weigh in on how you progress. Marcus mentioned some of these things earlier around mentors, reaching out, things of that nature. Leadership opportunities are important. Making sure that there is an avenue for folks who are seeking those opportunities, who are from those diverse backgrounds, have that platform in regards to Bing or PATH to do that. So organizations should take stock in the fact that if they make it available, or in the old saying of a movie, if you build it, they'll come. That's how I like that question. So we'll let the poll go for another 10 seconds here before we close up and move on to the next question. All right, going to end the poll now. And it looks like leadership opportunities is narrowly ahead of mentoring. So keep that in mind, leaders, those who are leaders and others who are influencers, as you go back to your organizations after today's conversation. Thank you very much. All right, so the next question I'd like to have our panelists take on, and we will allow Daryl to start off with this question. Considering the recent events, what are some of the biggest IT-related challenges your organization has faced, and how are you addressing them?
I think that regarding your question in regards to what organizations have faced, there are two aspects of it. It is the customer aspect and the way that we deliver products and services to our customers, but also the employee aspect, where we are now dealing with a virtual workforce and how to engage in a meaningful way that does not necessarily take away from the experiences had when we were all in the office. So I would say that from the customer perspective, there is a greater need for tools that help to really provide transparency on levels of engagement, as well as understanding the challenges or the omissions of the needs for satisfying some of those customer needs. So when we think about the government agencies that we support, many of them are utilizing legacy tools and applications. And in order for them to modernize, they had to make significant investments in cloud-based resources. On the other side, from the employee perspective, many employees were not necessarily engaged at and did not necessarily have high morale. The culture has changed. So how do you create a culture that is more based on a virtual workforce? And then how do you engage these folks in a meaningful way through their supervisors, through their management, as well as giving them the resources and tools that they need at their fingertips? So that is something that has been a challenge. I would say the third piece is really what's going on the ground, and as far as racial equality and social justice, and being able to have very courageous conversations. That is something that is really based in our ability to train our leaders as well as our employees to have these conversations, but also present opportunities for safety through our employee resource groups where they can have these courageous conversations as well.
Thank you, Daryl. What about you, Salma?
Thank you, Jermaine. So just going to kind of augment what Daryl just spoke about. There's, the answer to that is twofold, if not threefold. One is obviously, your service that you're providing to your customer. In our case, it's mostly internal customers within the agency and such. And then the other is the workforce supporting them. So I'm an SO, and so part of the challenge we had was to not only, strengthen our infrastructure to support the ongoing customer base, but also support the telework that needed to happen because of just everybody working from home. So those opportunities, as I'd like to say, were many, and challenges were there, of course. And then, of course, you have the mix of cybersecurity issues and events that do, of course, occur anytime there's some kind of chaos going on. So it's the way I look at it, there were many challenges and there still are. I think apart from, you've got the technology part of it, but also the people challenge, which I thought was really something that good came out of this, because I work in a group, and I know Dr. Cruz spoke about this earlier in the previous section, but I'm a one woman in a team of 30. So the diversity is fairly limited, it's very glaring, so to speak. So for me to be able to connect with my colleagues and my peers and people that report to me, and, you know, vertical, horizontal, whichever way you look, it really, really, everybody took, it's usually me that has to make all the effort just because I'm kind of like the minority in every way. But this time around, it was kind of like my colleagues and such really did try to make the connection with me and on a professional basis. So I thought that really, the teamwork really was something that was highlighted and also worked on. It just strengthened our team so much. So that's a good thing that I think, apart from all the technology things that we've been able to solve and come up with, I think that was the main thing that I thought was the highlight of this scenario that we're in right now.
Thank you for sharing that
Sure.
that insight. That's a good teammate. You know, we
Yeah.
want folks that are good teammates that make us feel welcome, make us feel like we belong, and that's so important. So that's a mature organization.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
All right, and let's see here. Who's next? Jennifer. Last but not
My answers are going to be the same as Daryl and Salma. To be honest, there are obviously different ways that every agency, every organization can approach the current events. But I believe in what they just summarized really is representative what my government agency has been dealing with. So telework readiness. Overnight, everyone had to jump to trying to satisfy almost 100% of their personnel going offline and connecting into the network from wherever they reside in the country. From there, we had to be able to still meet the needs of our customers and our clients, given that we needed the accessibility and availability of these information systems to be able to help us to do that. We're also utilizing various technologies to conduct our work. Whether you're on WebEx all day or Zoom or Skype or MS Teams, we're having to utilize these technologies now a little bit more foundationally than we were doing in the past. Because for me, my teams were primarily in the field, on the road, on site at various agencies, really conducting our on-site assessments. So once the coronavirus pandemic heightened, we had to take a step back and really reevaluate our scopes and our methodologies to figure out how it is we were going to be able to meet all of our desired goals and the metrics on the deadline, but also satisfy our clients given our new virtual environment. And then fast forwarding to the current events that took place that reminded us that racial diversities do exist. And in noting some of the conversations that are going on in the chat, because Daryl mentioned the courageous conversations. So using my platform at the agency, I was one of the individuals that were tapped very early on to help lead and guide some of those courageous conversations across our agency. I did so within my own department, but I also led some conversations across various teams. And much like you will know in your environment at your workplace, there's no one way to have those conversations. Everybody individually brings their own lens and their own unconscious biases to the conversations. Yes, we would talk them out. I met with senior executives across the agency, learning center operation managers, and other colleagues as we tried to streamline how those conversations could go. But much like anybody makes a plan for any effort, once we got into those environments and tried to create a safe space for everybody to start having those courageous conversations, many of the conversations took a left or a right-hand turn and went to other topics and considerations that we had to quickly redesign our focus to address. A lot of folks wanted to talk about sensitivities a bit with the political arena. And given that I work for GAO, we have that unbiased, nonpartisan voice that we have to maintain. So we had to address those concerns as well. There was some ethics and some legal concerns about how to cope, and then how to help your children cope in the environment. I even led a conversation with a group of individuals who were law enforcement, So at the beginning and the middle of certain events, as we continue to have these courageous conversations, a lot of sensitivities were increasingly being heightened, where I had people to break out in tears as they were sharing their stories. So it's a difficult situation, and there's no one way to have these conversations. And I wouldn't look at them as being a backfire, but they're always creating ways for us to learn and develop even in ourselves so that we can positively navigate the various situations.
That is so key what you just said about the courageous conversations, Jennifer, and creating that safe space where you can share that. We live in a great time right now that we can do these things, and now that this awakening that I spoke of earlier during the onset of the discussion allows us to do this. And there's a lot of energy, a lot of star power on this call. A lot of folks who have similar stories. I mean, we can go on and on, like you said, for days. But it's important, as you indicated, that organizations must allow this to happen. You have to do it in a way that benefits all. And don't be afraid what you might hear. It's going to come out. So I really appreciate you sharing that. And I'm sure that you will continue to push forward through that. So that leads us to our next polling question for this second panel. I'm launching right now. There you go. We'll let that go for about a minute or so. Go ahead and weigh in. Looking forward to it. Getting back to the topic of the courageous conversations, as you go back to your organizations and you start to have these, and I'm sure Jennifer, Daryl, and Salma can attest, and the other panelists as well, assume that it's going to be positive, in the end. That's the intent of this, that this is going to be a positive thing. And, what you're trying to do, and I'm speaking from a person who comes from, multicultural, background, this is an opportunity for me to educate you on what it's like to be me, right? So when I'm out in the street walking the dog, in my neighborhood, that type of thing, I may have to figure out, okay, should I go this route or versus that route? Should I be speaking to folks? So there are a lot of things that we have to do, as I said earlier, just to be even, just to be normal, right? And we shouldn't have to do that. So,
Jermaine, we had some questions in the chat here. One was, has anyone had courageous conversations backfire on them?
Great question.
Well, I personally just answered that, so I'll let someone else do it.
Daryl, Osama?
Yeah, sure. I can take that. Has it backfired? I wouldn't say it's backfired, but nothing has come of it. Yes, that's happened several times where I may have had a conversation and it's just been heard, but nothing was ever done of it. In some cases, the way my approach to issues, it depends on what type of issue it is. If it's a personnel issue where, there's some conflict between me and somebody else, I try to approach that person directly first, try to understand what's going on and where the issue is, so to speak. And then, I won't just go straight to the supervisor and such. So there's an escalation process to try and resolve things. And sometimes things, when you just address it with a person directly, it kind of takes care of itself, because a lot of times once you recognize it with that person that, hey, I've got an issue with the way you're behaving, or I'm not sure I understand what's going on here, could you clarify, they're put on notice, and then they'll back off with whatever they're doing. And maybe it may very well be an understanding issue on my end, so it just depends. But yeah, there have been times that I've had to escalate things and it hasn't gone anywhere, so that's not a good feeling.
Daryl, do you have any input on that?
Yes, and I greatly appreciate the responses because they do talk to a greater issue or a greater opportunity, and that is the culture of your organization and the values of your organization. And if you have an organization that believes in values of transparency and trust and equality and being able to have those courageous conversations, then it really does enable you to really bring forth certain concerns that you are raising, but also certain solutions that you believe will rectify that particular issue. So I would say that culturally, understanding your values is really important, and being able to identify where there are some gaps. The ERG, when I talked about it earlier, and bringing your authentic self to work, often your employee resource groups do provide you a safe space and hopefully executive sponsorship, and where you can raise this concern through that leadership chain and be able to bring it to the necessary levels for action. This doesn't happen all the time. However, those are the systems. When we talk about systemically balancing things out and systemically improving things, that is the way that we improve them, that we create processes and approaches that are consistent and that we can rely on in certain cases to address these challenging issues. Now, if you are the one that brings it up and it is a challenging conversation, I would say that within Google, they talk about the values of respecting the user, respecting the opportunity, and respecting each other. So it's hopefully based on respect, and when presenting these challenges, it does get emotional, but hopefully it's respectful where people can understand your point of view.
Thank you very much, Daryl. Thank you so much.
Jermaine, if I may just add one quick thing, I was going to say, just because an organization has policies and procedures to manage all of this doesn't necessarily mean it's something that they actually support. So it's important to mention that, because legally we're all all corporations and government offices and agencies, we're all supposed to have all these policies and procedures, but whether it's actually welcomed and it's supported is a different thing, and hopefully the culture will change. So yeah, that's a very real problem.
I'm glad you said that, because my response to that is no lip service here.
Yep.
Put your money where your mouth is.
Absolutely.
And that's what.
And then we have one more question about how can time drive when a courageous conversation is had? So is there a better time for it? Is there no, sometimes by that token, there might be no time that's a good time for it?
I think the time is when you feel the time is right. It's a subjective, like I said, there's a process that I usually follow. If I'm uncomfortable in a situation, I'll kind of go talk to the person or people directly at first, just to make sure I'm understanding the situation correctly, because it could very well be me that's misunderstanding or misreading cues. So, it just, what your level of comfort is and where you are and where you feel that, okay, this is just kind of not, you have that gut feeling. So that's my response.
Jennifer, any thoughts?
I agree with what she said. It depends on your comfortability, but also I think the more timely you are in responding to a situation, instead of letting it kind of die down and simmer, it will be fresh on everyone's minds. So as you're approaching this conversation with someone individually or collectively with the group, everyone can be reminded of some recent event that took place, whether it was a national level type of event or something that was culturally somewhat dividing your interworking environment in the office. So the quicker you can get that organized and the quicker you can recreate that safe space, the more productive your team environment can be.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I agree with both points that were made. And one of the things that happened shortly after the George Floyd incident, when I was at Salesforce, is that it took me a while to process everything that was going on. And what happened is a week later, our organization was created a space where we could submit recommendations. So therefore, you have a big issue and you raise that issue and you create a avenue in which people can voice their thoughts, opinions, and hopefully it leads to further action. And I will say that, you know, no organization is perfect. Every organization is looking to improve the way that they support or respond to these courageous conversations or significant events in agencies or companies. But I tend to think that feedback, if we were to utilize that, would be the most helpful in a timely manner, as Jennifer indicated earlier.
Wow, great. That was awesome. Any other questions in the pipeline there, Nicole, that we need to address, or can we show the results of our last poll question?
Not yet, no, sir.
All right, I'm sharing the results. There we go. So the question again was, in light of recent events, has your organization done anything to address the topic of race, diversity, and inclusion, excuse me, with its employees? And we have a good bit of folks who said yes. And we have a small percentage of folks who said not sure. For those who may not be sure, I suggest you reach out to, say, your HR organization of sorts, or your leadership team, to see, you know, what it is that we're doing to address some of these things. So raise your hand and get it on the table. Thank you. Next for the panelists, could you share with us some advice, and it's a similar question we asked earlier, in your opinion, people who are in these diverse scenarios, who may be early on in their career, middle of their career, what kind of advice would you give them in progressing? I will leave that up to Daryl to go first.
Thank you very much, Jermaine. So one thing I would like to discuss, because a great question just came in the chat about culture being against diversity and inclusion. And when talking about culture, it is a change management exercise. And I usually boil it down to head, heart, and hands. And that is what the organization believes, what they feel is what they'll do. And if you create an environment in where diverse views and diverse opinions are welcomed, being able to expand the aperture and ensure that we're cascading across the largest group in order to bring diverse talent to our organization, you do create a culture which enables diversity and inclusion. So I definitely would be happy to take a look at that paper, but I would say that your culture could surely be inclusive, that, you know, doesn't necessarily negate from it. In regards to recommendations for folks in the middle of their career, I would say that there are a couple of different things that I've experienced personally. I am a millennial, so I'm on the furthest edge, but at the same time, these are some of the experiences I had, is that being able to have kind of the macro awareness of what's going on in your environment and in the world, but micro focus, and meaning doing your job well, doing small things well, and continuing to get those wins, because it creates momentum and often creates success and visibility, and where folks would want you to join or work on their teams. Because really, at the end of the day, it's about value, the value that we bring to our organizations and the value that we bring to our environments. So being mindful of that. Being able to seek out mentors is something that was mentioned earlier, and something that I highly believe in. I'm from the inner city of Philadelphia. I grew up in a single parent household. I'm the oldest of three, and my mother was 16. So that doesn't necessarily negate the fact that I was able to pursue degrees and pursue higher achievements through the jobs and responsibilities that I've had. And the third thing is learn everything. Being able to just take in knowledge. Actually, Gandhi had a great quote. He says, learn as if you're going to live as if you're going to die tomorrow, and learn as if you're going to live forever. And complement to that, he also said, be the change you want to see in the world. And those are a couple of philosophies that I use in order to achieve certain outcomes. And the other thing is always pursue your best self. Don't be afraid to grade yourself. Don't be afraid to assess yourself in order to achieve the outcomes that you are looking for.
Well, thank you very much, Daryl, for that. And I can relate. I'm an inner city kid myself. I grew up in Detroit, Michigan. And, you know, the Detroit Public Schools did not have the best school district. And, you know, it just, you know, you have to seek the challenges. You have to get out there and challenge yourself. So thanks for sharing that. Jennifer, same question. What advice would you give?
A lot of advice. Like Marcus said, this topic can take me all day. If you ask me at the right time, of course. But much like many of the panelists have already said, do your research. A lot of people come into the IT field saying, I just want to do IT. But what about IT really interests you? There is a large environment that you could really take advantage of. I also ask for everyone to create an individual development plan. In this development plan, you can create small and large goals that you can kind of review and assess at your own will yearly so that you could evaluate how you are accomplishing your task that you've kind of set forth for yourself. Like everyone else, I'm big on advisors and mentors. Advisors for me personally are somewhat, at times, those that are also my grade level, sometimes even a grade below me, so that I can kind of look and receive some advice and future considerations about how I'm leading as an individual in my environment. But I also have a mentor team. And in this team, I have created a very diverse set of folks that I look to for advanced advice for how it is I want to grow in my discipline and also advance and excel in my career. And when I meet with advisors or mentors, I bring with them what it is I'm wanting to get out of the relationship. I focus on certain goals, and over time they do change, but I try to really stay focused on what it is I want to receive from those particular relationships. I also ask people to consider re-evaluating your goals over time. No one's ever said your goals have to stay the same. And given the opportunities that you may or may not have received in your various organizations, you might want to look at the goals, not as a way of looking at it as a failure, but to just readjust them accordingly to how you can further grow in your environment. I also think you should celebrate your small victories and your large victories. For me personally, it's about centering your energy and protecting your peace, in that what's for you will always be for you. And as you're looking at other colleagues around you thinking, how did they do that and I'm still not there yet? You have to worry about yourself first, and what's for you just will become that.
Wow, thank you very much. And, you know, when you talk about the mentorship team or the mentor team, you know, I liken that to what I said yesterday during my conversation with Renee, and that is, you know, over time, I've built a circle of colleagues, individuals in my network that I can go to without failing and get sound, unbiased, you know, advice on, you know, certain topics. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. Salma, what advice would you give folks?
So the number one advice, which certainly worked for me, is invest in yourself. And that means get the skills for what you're trying to do. You know, the certifications, every certification I have, I've done self-study. You don't have to spend a lot of money going to classes and such. It's just be dedicated to whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. Have a goal in mind, have a vision for what you want to do. Definitely mentorship is something that's important, but you have to mentor yourself first, invest in yourself, be true to yourself. If you can't do something, don't try to, you know, cut corners and such and just try to get by it. If you can't do it, you can't do it. It's the end of the story. One thing about mentorship I do want to mention, because I've been a mentor and I still am a mentor, and I've also been a mentee. It's important, if you're reaching out to someone to be your mentor, make sure you're actually going to be doing your part of it. Nobody's going to do the work for you and tell you, you know, here's a job, go work here, or this is how I'm going to solve your problem. You have to be willing to come to the table 100% willing to learn and hear the good and the bad parts of it. So that's definitely important. Be honest, be really dedicated to whatever it is that you're trying to do. Otherwise, don't do it. So those are my key things.
I appreciate that. Mentoring. It's two-way. I'm sorry, Daryl. Mentoring is a two-way street, and and everyone benefits from it in the end. So thank you for sharing that, Selma. Daryl, you had a question.
Well, just one more point, and I think it kind of culminates on all of our feedback was your brand. Being able to establish and protect your brand. Because we are in a virtual environment, no longer in those physical environments, your brand is now reflective of some of the social media engagement that you have, some of the things that you publish or share. So be mindful of your brand, because that actually is associated. So the line between personal and professional is starting to thin, and being able to have a consistent brand, I think, does help in your career and really does reinforce the things that you are pursuing.
Awesome.
And also, if I may just add one last thing, as far as mentors are concerned, mentors are not just, don't just focus on technology that, oh, I want a CISO to mentor me and I want a CTO to mentor me. Look for, it takes more than just the technical skills. You need to be able to speak. You need to be able to establish relationships. You need to be able to get along with people. So look at where you feel your weaknesses are. So for example, if public speaking is an issue, doing presentations is an issue, look to a person that you admire, the way they do their work, and reach out to them. So mentorship doesn't always have to be within your field of what you do. I mean, I mentor somebody that works in the public relations office. He's a actual information, public information officer. So that's not my field, but still he's reached out to me for whatever he saw in me that he wanted to learn from me. And so don't just focus on, okay, I need to just focus in on technology folks. It could be anybody, anywhere. I've learned from people that are younger than me. I coach soccer and stuff. I learn from the kids. So the learning never stops, and you should keep an open mind and learn from everybody and anybody that you can. So that's it.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Building on that, why should young people from diverse backgrounds, and we asked this question earlier, but I want to hear from you all on this. Why should they consider a career in IT? I will go with Jennifer. Thank you.
Okay, similar to the last panel, same answers, never a dull moment. I always have fun days. I mean, day in and day out could be stressful given the nature of our work and the environment, but we make it fun given if you're around people who will allow you to lead with that lens. There's always room to advance your career, and in IT, sometimes that advancement can be rather quickly. As you build your network, you can gain additional insights from panels such as this, forums, councils, conferences. There's always an incentive to really continue that and further that educational background that you need to really be successful in this environment, whether it's really informal or formal type of instructions. And then with that, you can, like Selma was just speaking about the certifications, there's always ways to really perfect your craft and gain new advances so that you will continue to never have those dull moments.
Thank you. Selma.
So the number one reason is if you're interested in it. First of all, that's the most critical thing. You have to be interested in wanting to do this kind of work. If it's, some folks focus on the money aspect of it, or just the fact that the advancement is faster and such, like Jennifer spoke to. But if you're not interested in it, you're not going to enjoy it, and you're not going to excel at your work. And if you don't excel at your work, and where you're spending 8 to 10 hours a day, it's just not going to work out in the end. So obviously, if you have the interest and the aptitude for it, go for it. It is something that if you work hard at it, you can go as far as you want. It's not one of those fields that's slow moving. So certainly the advancement is there, and there's just so many different focus areas that you can go into. That, I mean, I started at a help desk, and now I'm an ISO. So it's just ever changing, and it's interesting. I enjoy it. So those would be mine.
Thank you, Daryl.
I like data to really drive a lot of the feedback, especially in regards to this question. So if we think about diversity and inclusion, the best way to manage and understand how well it's going is to measure it, right? I think Peter Drucker said you can't manage what's not measured. So one of the things that I check out every year is Indeed has a Best Jobs of 2020. And in this Best Jobs of 2020, 7 out of the 10 positions of Best Jobs are IT related jobs. The beauty of it is that IT and cybersecurity have so many different areas in which you can contribute to the outcomes that we are trying to achieve. It's not just being a coder, it's not just being a white hat, it's being able to understand where your skills are, what you're passionate about, and be able to provide that. I actually had the benefit of speaking to a number of middle and high school students yesterday that are participating in a summer camp called ID Tech from not only the DC area, but Toronto, Houston, and Florida, in which they are taking classes to expand upon video games and how video games are built on technology platforms and how they are built, how to code them, because it's already talking to the interests. Being able to just connect with those passions, I think, is very important. And taking it further to say, when someone tells you, I'm not an IT person, I usually say, do you use a smartphone every day? Do you use your computer every day? Well, there's some level of technology that you are embracing, whether you like it or not. So being able to have that insight and that understanding, I think, is very helpful for folks that are looking to go into the IT and cybersecurity fields.
Wow, I agree with you on that point there, Daryl. You know, it's good to understand how that technology is built. Don't just be a consumer of it. Understand how it works and how it impacts your life and your day-to-day. All right, next question. Looking at the time here, we're good on time. This is probably our final question, and then we'll hand it back over to Jose to kind of take us home. This is the big one. Describe how diversity matters and how organizations can benefit from it or benefit from having a diverse workforce. So we'll allow Salma to start us off with that one. Go for it.
I'm going to start because I'm the only one woman in a team of 30. Why does it matter? Because it's very lonely. I think we spoke to this earlier in the first part of the discussion here. You know, different perspectives, whether it's not just limited to organizations, any aspect of our life, the more perspectives we have and opinions we have, the better we are at the result, or getting at a result that works for everybody. And I think one of the panelists previously spoke to this, that, you know, we live in a diverse world. It's not just everybody's not like me and everybody's not like you. And so when our consumers and our the people that we interact with every day that are benefiting or are kind of impacted by our decisions, then it's important to have as many perspectives as we can, because otherwise, I mean, I can't think for everything and everybody. So it's important to have that. Beyond just diversity, you know, you can have the check boxes checked saying, okay, I've got so many of this race and that race and this female or male kind of combinations within the team, but you also have to make sure that you're actually utilizing that diversity to the benefit of everyone, which does not always happen. And I spoke to this earlier, just because there's a policy and then there's, you know, procedures about how diversity should be a part of every workforce and such, doesn't necessarily mean that it's leveraged. And so that's where I know I personally felt that shortage and that deficiency. Yeah. Yes,
thank you. It's important. You got to have a good mix. I call it, you got to have disagreement. You know, you have, and out of that,
for sure,
he comes. So Jennifer, what do you think? What matters? Why does it matter?
I mean, it matters, and similar to Salma, I'm often one of the only women. I can't say I'm the only, because I received a team back in November that gave me 2 ladies, and I couldn't be happier now not being one of the only. And we all work very well together. But diversity in your professional life, in your workforce, it brings about the different backgrounds, the different knowledge foundations, educational levels. You have your races, you have your experiences, your cultures, and then your ages, which always comes, you know, as part of the conversation as well. But in that, you got this hodgepodge group of folks that you can now work with and talk amongst each other to really enhance your own personal professional development in technical, operational, and administrative areas as you would like. From this, you're also working with a team of collected diverse individuals to really establish more quality products for your clients and your customers. Diversity also brings about a different set of sensitivities. You have different opinions, different sensitivities of viewpoints, and how people will converse with you in heated situations and really want to get their points across. And in this, sharing these valuable viewpoints across the different diverse teams that you kind of set up, you will be able to then discern how you can fundamentally start to really yield different products. Something that you've been doing all along for forever and ever may not always be the best solution, but getting these teams with more diverse individuals with their different perspectives and sensitivities and viewpoints can often lead to a new way of conducting work that will really yield, again, that quality product.
Daryl, same question. Why does it matter?
So, absolutely, I appreciate it. So as I think about diversity, I think about what's happening with globalization. We're trying to address the needs of many different countries, ethnicities, languages, and really we cannot represent it just being in one place, in one silo. And many of our organizations are trying to represent what we are trying to achieve globally. And when I was looking at the global metrics for diversity, it was actually analyzing men and women, because you have certain countries and certain continents that are made up of primarily one race. And being able to now look at what is happening in the US, we are all moving towards a more technical foundation, which we are dealing with systems and technology that are trying to assess or address all of our different viewpoints, all of our different perspectives. When we think about the bias that is in artificial intelligence, that is something that is real. And being able to create a more unbiased technology set requires the hands of all. I was talking to the youth yesterday about how if you think about any technology, whether it's a computer that you're using, whether it's an application that you're leveraging, whether it's a video game that you're playing, you have no idea how many hands and how many different ethnicities and demographics have contributed to that outcome. So as we learn to be more empathetic and exhibit more emotional intelligence, we can actually benefit from the outcomes, benefit from the value, benefit from the performance that is created as a result of it. So I think overall, we are the beneficiaries of globalization, and it is important that our organizations are empathetic and that create more emotional intelligence in order to achieve better outcomes and performance for all.
Thank you for sharing that. And to the points that were just made, there's some may or may not be aware of this, but Mattel, the toy company, speaking of ERGs, reached out to one of their ERGs, the Blackgate ERG at their company, to get their opinion on a new doll or new toy. I heard the story recently, but this was a few years ago. But they went to this group to say, okay, the name, is it relevant? Is it culturally acceptable? How they look, those types of things. So yeah, it's important that companies reach back into those different scenarios that they've created, those safe places that we talked about earlier, and that increases, or help increase the bottom line for those organizations. Everyone just benefits from it, So from a profitability perspective, from hey, I really want to be in a company that is acceptance of my beliefs and how I view things are important to them and it matters to them. So thank you for sharing that. I really appreciate that. Any other thoughts on that topic before we hand it over to Jose from the panelists?
I would just say be purposeful, just be able to exhibit intent. It was mentioned earlier, but success leaves clues. And I like what Marcus mentioned about the next 1 billion users and being able to really focus on how to achieve significant outcomes. So I would say be the change. you want to see in the world. I'm happy to connect with anyone that wants to connect on LinkedIn, and feel free to reach out. I'm looking forward to further engagements with the community.
Salma?
And likewise, I love to give back. So if anyone wants to reach out and connect, and if there's anything I can do to help you guys, progress further in your career, whether with advice or otherwise, just let me know. I'd be more than happy to help. We do have to take it upon ourselves, and there's a sense of responsibility that we should all feel to really get diversity and inclusion, make it a very central point in our workforce, not only just in our personal lives, but also definitely in our workforce, because really it's not where it needs to be.
Thank you. And Jennifer?
Similar to the both of them, I'm always happy to continue the conversation. I think it's healthy to do so. It's always timely for me in my environment. For sure, I tend to spend my volunteer time with youth organizations, because those folks that sowed seeds into me early on they have incited me in such a way for my career that I want to continually give back. And I talked a lot about my mentors, but I also have a team of mentees across the organization who I also enjoy working with, so that I can see them develop and grow as well. So yes, for sure, if you would like to continue the conversation, please feel free to reach out.
All right, thank you very much, panelists. And that about wraps it up for us. Thank you so much for your insights. Thank you for the audience for sticking around. We've had great attendance throughout this 2-hour segment. We do appreciate you. We appreciate everyone that took the time today to join us. And as I said at the top, we wanted to leave here today empowering you to go back to your situations, your organizations, and have conversations to help influence change with policies, and to make it a better place. So we hope we accomplished that with you today. And with that said, thank you very much.